Hi, Coach. Thank you so much
Hey,
for joining me today.
well, it's always exciting talking to you, Dina. But in terms of what we're going to discuss today, I think I'm a little bit excited about sharing some thoughts with you and just informing everyone about the success of Army women's basketball and the little part that I had with a semi-good point guard by the name of Dina Cara Metropoli.
Well, thanks, Coach. Thanks, Coach. I'm going to get right into the questions. So, tell us a story of how you came to be the head coach of the women's basketball team at Army, and why did you say yes?
Well, going back, I had a 10-year plan, and I just completed my ninth year of coaching boys high school basketball, five in the state of Pennsylvania and four in the state of New York. And I was 60 miles outside of West Point at Marlboro, New York. I felt I had to take a leap of faith with my coaching career because I was going into my 10th year, and I felt that, you know, I didn't want to be in high school more than 10 years. So, very fortunate to have a sports editor with the Newburgh News in Bo Gill who made me aware of the job search at West Point and was instrumental in influencing me to consider that position. Also, he was instrumental in putting my name in the search with the committee led by Dr. Peterson. Even though I had never coached women, I believed in my heart, in my ability to teach the game, especially with my defensive philosophy that defense is a multiple effort want to succeed, and offense is a multiple action. But I felt we could be competitive. We can be a competitive team with what I had, but I just didn't know what I had. Uh, and I think after talking, having an opportunity to talk with the team, which was made up of all plebes at that time, with Coach Dennis Van Fossen, I was impressed with their basketball IQ. I know they would give me the effort needed, and especially after talking with a few of the players, especially Christy Stevens, I knew she would lead her teammates in possessing the toughness, the togetherness, and a sustained effort to be a 40-minute team. I felt that listening to them and watching their success the year before, I believe they were something like 15-5. And I knew with the mindset and the mission at West Point that we were going to be a team that could compete. But, at the defensive end, you have to find ways to be better. But then when I had a chance to talk with Carol Barkalow, she echoed Christie's determination to play defense, but she also had a mindset that she was a very good offensive threat. And, and you always want people to believe in themselves and play to their strengths. And, offense to me is a multiple effort mindset with, you have to be a little bit skilled in the ability to know when to shoot it, know when to pass it. But getting back to my story, uh, after being informed that they were going to offer me the coaching position, I was honored to accept the head coaching job for women's basketball. I felt with the leadership of Dr. Peterson, who was it was all about him. It was his program, and I felt that we could get along as long as I listened to all his ideas and the support of Colonel Anderson and just Colonel Ruchatz. I felt there was a support group that I liked who they were. I liked what the foundation of the program was going to be. And then when I put a coaching staff together with, Ish Burks, who was really the key. He was more the head coach than I was in terms of identifying with players and identifying with uh, what we had to do as a team, what were the restrictions with their military life, and then personalities like Coach Dave Yates and Pete Hall. And the one fella that I'm remiss. My last assistant coach was Bob. Do you remember Bob? I can't think of his last name now.
I can't either now.
Fowler? I don't know, but I apologize for that.
Lauer, Bob Lauer.
Lauer, that's it. Lauer.
Lauer.
There you
Yeah.
go. I was close.
Yeah. Good
Hey,
job.
and even though we were going to be a team of plebes and is it yearlings
Yes.
or what's the other term that they used to use?
No, it's yearlings. We were
Yucks,
pigs
yucks.
in Europe. Yeah.
Okay. You know, I believe we could compete with any team on our schedule, but my concern was, did we have any skill players? When I talked to Dr. Peter, because watching, just at that time talking to Van Fossen, I think Sheets, was it Brent? Not Brenda.
Brennan.
Brandon Sheets. She was one of the top ball players on that team and could score along with Carol Barkalow. But Dr. Peterson informed me that the incoming plebe class, which he was instrumental in putting together. But I remember a time I was down in Tucker, Georgia. So I thought I helped a little bit in doing that. But, with the Miles sisters coming in and Dina Caradimitropoulos and Kim Hall, just those were offensive players that I believe we would be able to increase our scoring opportunities. But, as a coach, retired coach now and a coach then, you're always worried about blending personalities, skills, egos, and a heartbeat. And my initial thought and vision was to find the heartbeat of the team. And there were so many players, Regina Todd, all those kids, not kids, ladies that, were there at the time. You always wanted to find people in terms of just, I had to have a team and find that heartbeat and have the leadership set team standards. So, okay, I was the first leader of the team, but I had to put those players out there. And the first thing this from your West Point experience, first thing in leadership is trust. And I knew from my 9 years in coaching and playing that players are going to do what they believe, not what they're told. So I had to find some team standards that the members could contribute to. I didn't want to play in a position or put anybody in a position where they didn't have a skill level or they couldn't contribute to the team concept. But once we got, I think once we got everyone on the same page, I believe everybody took ownership and were accountable for their actions. And that's where I was trying to go with that. I firmly believe that as an individual, individuals want to be on a team. And I think they want to be a part of something bigger than they are, than themselves. And well, that's what was happening with all of the cadets. So I figured I could roll that over into, you know, what we're trying to do on a basketball court. And I felt that if you were coming to West Point, you had a heartbeat to be successful in everything you do, not just on the basketball court, but also in your everyday life, in your classroom, in your demands on you with your military obligations. So I knew that from that standpoint, we had to find a balance. And Coach Burks, Colonel Burks, was instrumental in sharing with me of understanding the day of a cadet.
Mm-hmm.
Because I remember the first week of practice when we were up there. I can remember some yawns, and nobody was just into it for the time that we were practicing. And I met with my staff and I says, hey fellas, we got to be more efficient with our practices because I learned of how much sleep the cadet was getting at that time, the demands on them, both mentally and emotionally and physically. So we designed practices to be time efficient with drills that had winners and losers. And took a lot of time to explain to you because you always questioned everything I did, which was good. It made me a better coach, along with some of your other teammates, young teammates, that I made drills that were time related, goal related, and peer related. So I thought that kept you sharp, in a limited amount of time, both mentally and physically.
Mm-hmm.
So from that standpoint, we just started building a team.
Yes.
And we looked at the team and we saw that we were, I guess, all about the same size. We weren't all the same shapes, but we're all basically all the same size. I shouldn't have said that. That wasn't good. But defensively, because of our lack of size, my defensive philosophy that I carried with what I played in Pennsylvania in high school, and then when I went to college, what I played, it just fed right in. I wanted to be a matchup team. I wanted to be a team defensively that we were a team that could switch 1 through 5 because it didn't matter if someone was oversized. I just didn't want that person getting a good shot. And so we could switch 1 through 5 because we're all about 5'10", 5'11" at the most. Well, I think Miss was about 6'6", 6'1", if that. But
she played like that, that's for sure.
But she shrunk now, right? No. But we were going to be a team, a switching team 1 through 5 and a help team that could just take away 3 levels of our opponent's offense.
Mm-hmm.
And the first thing we try to do is take away the inside. Well, that meant take away the lane. Anything that came into the lane, we'd say nothing in the lane, deflect every pass in the lane. And then if the ball got in there, we would double team the ball. I don't know if you recall our defensive schemes, but you had a great understanding at the offensive end. So defensively, we put you on the top just to take away passing lanes. And you bought into that like your teammates. It's what are you going to permit the ball to see? If we could put your head on the ball and take away the vision of seeing the ball inside, that was a plus for us. So teaching the game, like I had mentioned earlier, I thought I was a great teacher of the fundamentals. And thank goodness everybody bought into the system. But in saying nothing in the lane and deflect every pass and double down and trap the ball, and when it gets inside, I always had 5 players guarding the ball.
Yep, it worked really well.
Yeah, and then we talked about closing out to defend the shooter. Well, I was very careful in talking to you and your teammates, excuse me, who were shooters and who were drivers. Early on, I had mentioned that, well, she's a non-shooter. My theory was we were going to take away the good shooters and let poor shooters take outside shots. Because, you've played the game for so long, everybody can't shoot from the perimeter. And when a poor shooter starts taking shots from the outside, their teammates get into a little bit of a, why are you taking that shot? You can't, you never make it in practice. Why are you shooting it in a game? Well, you're open. She's open. So that's the theory behind that, was to let poor shooters take outside shots and then limit their second chance points by 5 people rebounding at the defensive end.
Mm-hmm.
But my mistake with your group, and I believe it might have been you or me or someone that I said they're non-shooters. That 22 is a non-shooter, and she knocked down 2 shots, and you're looking at me like, what's going on? Well, just stay patient. But from that standpoint, I learned just get a better adjective than talking about people that it's a negative. So I used to say, play that person to drive, play that person to shoot. So we had drivers and shooters rather than non-shooters, if that makes any sense to you.
Absolutely.
But
Coach,
yeah,
your career at West Point was really, really successful. And what elements or results of your program at Army are you most proud of? And then why did you decide to leave and coach at Auburn?
there's a lot of questions there. Well, what I was proud of, we were to putting a team together. We were really a team of players that believed in the system. We had a basic defensive theory. We all bought into it. We had an offense where we, wanted to push the ball. We wanted to take quick open shots, and if we didn't, we wanted to have patience and help our teammates get open shots. And I thought we really got caught up in being a offensive team that shared the ball. So I was proud of the way we played the game.
Mm-hmm.
We played it with a want. We played it with a self-discipline. We had the effort, and we supported one another. And I remember that first game. The thoughts of me as a first-time coach in women's basketball, and we knew what we were in our practice schemes, but I never imagined we would go into that first game at New Paltz and have such a decisive victory. But in terms of our success there, I think we won 18 games the first year, and then we won 20 or 21 the second year. You say, why did I leave? Well, the success of those teams, of you and your teammates, gave me a belief that I could coach this game at the highest level and compete at the highest level. And, even though I loved what I was doing at West Point, it was a position where I felt I wanted to be at the hotbed of women's basketball all the time at that time, and that was in the Southeast. They're, they played the game at the high school level with a great deal of support. It just wasn't some assistant football coach that was going to coach the women's high school team. They were coaches, but I felt getting into the Southeastern Conference, I could play at another level. So, do I have regrets? I loved everything at West Point. But when the opportunity came, I just felt that was an opportunity for me to step out and see. And you're to blame. You and your teammates, you and your teammates put me out there.
We'll forgive you, Coach. Don't worry.
I don't think you have yet, but that's all right.
Okay. how has the sport of women's basketball changed over the past 45 years? And how did those changes impact your coaching strategies? And what are the unique challenges of coaching in the era of NIL? I know lots of questions, but
Yeah, let's take one at a time. Let's go with women's basketball the last 45 years. Well, probably the biggest earmark there is the quality of the basketball player. When we were at West Point and in my early years at Auburn, you had one or two players that were your go-to players offensively that could create shots on their own, could get the ball to their teammates, had a great basketball IQ offensively. But then as we go along and get into a position where, uh, as the sport grows, I look at how many more players became, well, you were athletic, then you were skilled, and then you grew in numbers.
mm-hmm.
So from the standpoint of a team concept, the skill development just expanded.
Mm-hmm.
You had players that had shooting ranges, you had athleticism and total skill sets. And I believe, you were one player that was ahead of your time in terms of your skill set. And that's why you were so successful at West Point in my system.
Mm-hmm.
But in terms of the last 45 years, I think when the NCAA took over, I guess that was about 81, 80, I think it was 82. They gave the sponsorship and they transitioned from AIAW. I think that was a big beginning to open the door
Mm-hmm.
for women's basketball because now they came with a national tournament. You had March Madness. The game developed with rules and pace, with more athletes. Then you had the smaller ball. I think that was I'm sure that was 84. Now, all they did with the ball, in circumference, they made it 1 inch less, and I think 2 ounces less. But I think that helped the game with the passing and cutting and the shooting. Your shooting range was increased. And then the shot clock. The shot clock grew. I think it started at what ended up, at 30 seconds now? In 85, it ended up in 30 seconds. And then the 3-point line. So the growth of the game in terms of the skill level, the athleticism, and then in terms of a growing amount of players that could play the game. How did that impact me? Well, we did it at Auburn. We worked very, very hard on preparing the player in preseason, physically and emotionally. We felt that we had to be bigger, stronger, because the game had evolved into explosive stops and starts. And from the defensive standpoint, we felt that we could push you and disrupt you, that you were taking quick shots. You had a short window to make decisions, and we were forcing you to shoot the ball off balance. We were forcing you to make bad decisions because we were a multiple defensive team. We covered the ball all over the floor from baseline to baseline. And we disrupted you. We deflected passes into the inside, and we tried to deflect passes also. We double teamed you in terms of what you were doing. So from my tenure at Auburn, we were a multiple defensive team that tried to take away what you did best. In other words, the point guard, the opposition point guard, we just took away your right shoulder. We said, okay, you're going to play from the left side. You're going to pass it from the left side. Your angles are going to be different. It was how I started off this little interview with, I thought I was a great teacher of fundamentals. I don't know if I was a great teacher, but I was always concerned about the fundamentals. I learned that way back when with great coaches that I had in high school and worked with, Sil Basinski and Jim Davis, guys that were they drilled into you how important the fundamentals were with your shooting foot, shooting hands, how to release the ball. But what we did at Auburn in terms of defensively, we were one of the top teams in the country because the players believed in taking away that right shoulder, taking away angles, double teaming when the ball went inside, being a great rebounding team. And therefore, that's where we had our success in my tenure there. Now you turn the page, what you asked me about NIL. Whew, name, image, and likeness. The challenges that these coaches have and these schools have, they're unique. But to me, and I don't know how you feel, Dina, they impact team dynamics. They impact team dynamics, recruiting, and you have so many legal issues with where you're going. How do you value you as a player compared to your teammate? Why would you be making more money than her? See, and coaches face that task of managing a locker room. I was always concerned for every year I coached, I wanted to know who was that sheriff in the locker room. Where did I get my input from? Well, from the trainers, from the strength coach, and good supporting cast. Tom Cross was a young man that I admired, a cadet that had good viewpoints on, and he wasn't afraid to talk to me and also Kenny about what I was doing, what was accepted, what was negative points. But he was gentle when he gave me the negative points. He said, you've got to look at this in a better view of getting the job done. And I can understand that. But what I'm trying to say to you, there's significant differences now in players, in their earnings, in what one player makes to the other. And I believe that's going to disrupt team unity and cause dissension. But balancing an individual and their team goals at the NIL level, I learned that when I was coaching in WNBA. I thought we had really good offenses, but when the star player got the ball, that was the end of the offense. I mean, it was their show. I mean, that's just the nature of the beast. What
Absolutely.
happens with the NIL recruiting and talent retention and the transfer portal? The transfer portal, I wish would only be one time. Then the second time, you would have to sit out a year. But every year, you have to retain your players. You have to recruit your players during the season because the bidding wars are going to start in March.
Mm-hmm.
And let's face it, it's pay for play. That's where we are now. It comes with the influence of agents and boosters and opposing teams.
Yep.
So you have roster unpredictability. When you look at a roster, you're almost like a junior college. That's how you have to look at your system and your team, because from that standpoint, your retention, you hope you get 2 years out of them, and that's a shame.
Yeah.
And it's difficult, from a coaching standpoint. Leadership is ongoing. It's adjustable, it's flexible, it's dynamic. But when you put the dollar sign involved in it and you have families involved, the first thing they want to say to you is, what's your package for my daughter? I go, whoa, whoa. But that's why you see so many of the great coaches leaving the game,
Mm-hmm.
because it's not an amateur game now. It's
Definitely not.
I do TV games. I have the great fortune of working and commentating on both men and women's basketball. And you talk about roster changes. My biggest time is spent with identifying with the roster, who's here this year, who's left, who's here, and then pronunciation of the names. But
Okay,
did I
good.
answer that question for you?
You did. You did. Thank you so much. Okay, so there's a new coach at West Point this fall, and I'm wondering, with all your experience at West Point, what advice would you give to her for her coming tenure?
Well, understand understand the mission uh, of West Point. Understand that the cadet has many responsibilities. Allow them to be cadets. Allow them to be just people, and then find a way to influence them to be great basketball teammates. And that's the first concept I would tell her to do. You know, they're learning leadership, and leadership is, like I said, you have to maintain a certain amount of discretion in leadership. I would tell her that in putting that team together, never let a person's weakness get in the way of their strengths. And that's just what I said at the beginning about finding the heartbeat of the team. Find out what they do well, stay with that, and just understand with these cadets, communication is important, trust is important, accountability or collective responsibility, and show them that you care. And then the bottom line is that you take pride in putting 5 players on that floor that have West Point on their chest. Did you fall asleep?